Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be implementing background task functionality inside of our Django application, which is going to allow us to periodically run pieces of code which can perform different functions inside of our application. Specifically, we're going to be defining a function which is going to be run periodically and is going to be responsible for calculating different statistics for all of the houses that we had inside of our application. And primarily its focus is going to be on calculating the completed task counts and not completed task counts present for each of the house that we have. We could have gone an easier way of actually implementing this logic by just making sure that every time a task status was updated, updating the amount of completed task or not completed task counts for the corresponding house that the task was linked to. But the reason I decided to go this approach was to actually show you how background tasks could be implemented in a Django application and how they can be then run to do periodic tasks that you might want to have done for your Django application, such as calculating statistics, or maybe if you had an app where you would have user subscriptions, going over user subscriptions and seeing if users have paid, and if not paid, then like removing their subscriptions and stuff like that. So with that said, let's get into it and let's see how to actually implement this. So to start off, the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to be using a package which is going to actually help us run background tasks. So to get started, the first thing we're going to be doing is that we're going to be installing a package which is called Django background tasks, which is going to allow us the functionality to actually create these tasks and then run them periodically. So to start off, what you're going to do is that you're going to do pip install and then install the package by doing django-background and from there -tasks and making sure that the package is installed. Once the package is installed, we have to let Django know that it has to actually use it, and for that we're going to go to our settings.py file, and once we're at our settings.py file, you can go up to where you have the installed apps, and then after Django filters, I'm actually going to add this new package that we just downloaded for background task, and you install it by adding background_task to your installed apps, and then don't forget the command, we can do command save. So once this is done, you can do /manage.py run server, and hopefully it should spin up, and an indication whether the package was successfully loaded would be that you get an error for unapplied migrations. So we can exit and quickly apply these migrations by doing manage.py and then migrate. And this should apply the migrations, and now we should be good. So we can do /manage.py run server, and we should now be all good to go. So once this is done, the next thing that we have to do is that we have to create an actual app that is going to encompass all of the logic for our background jobs. So to do this, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do /manage.py, then start app, and then I'm going to name my app background_jobs. So instead of doing background task, which was the name of our actual package, I'll just make it background jobs and then enter. And hopefully a new folder should appear for the new app that we have created, called background jobs. So once this is done, I have to now let Django know that it has to also use this app. So I'm going to go to our installed apps list, and then I'm going to install this new app by doing background_jobs, by adding background jobs to our installed apps list and then doing command save, and then making sure that the server runs. So everything looks good, and now we're actually ready to implement the functionality for the tasks. So to get started, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be creating a new file inside of our background jobs app, and I'm going to call this tasks.py. Once this is done, we are going to do the necessary imports that are required. The first is going to be from background task, so the package that we had installed from background tasks, import the background decorator. And following that, we'll also have from background tasks.tasks import task as BT. And the reason we can't import just task is because remember that we have a model inside of our actual Django application, which is called task. So hence, to make a clear differentiation between that task model and the task model that is provided to us by Django background task, I've renamed it to BT. So once this is done, the next thing we're going to do is that we're going to import the models that we require ourselves, which is the house model and also the task model. So from task.models import complete. So from task.models, we just need the complete variable, and then we can do command save. Okay, so now that we have all of the necessary imports done, the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to be defining the function, which is going to run periodically. And I'm going to name our function calculate underscore house underscore stats. And then we can, for now, just set the function definition to pass. And before we can actually define what the function is going to do, I'm going to decorate the function with our background decorator. And then I'm going to schedule it to 10 minutes. And what the schedule does is that it tells the package that when we call the specific command, which I'm going to show later on this video, how much time of that command being called should this specific function be run, and I've set that to 10 seconds. Once that is done, the next thing that we can do now is that we can actually define what our actual house statistic function is going to do. So what we have to do is that we have to go through all our houses and then calculate the completed task and not completed task count for it. So we can loop through all of those by doing for house in house.objects.all. Then for each of the house objects, we can set the underscore total task count to 0. We can set the completed underscore tasks underscore count to 0 as well. And then finally, what we can do, total task counts to 0, completed task counts to 0. And then the last thing that we're going to do is that we're going to get all of the task lists that correspond to this specific house by doing house task list equals to the house.lists.all. So now that we have all of the task lists available to us for the house, what we're going to do is that we're going to loop through all of them individually. For that, I can do for task list in, and I'm going to do lowercase list in house task list. I am going to increment the total tasks count by the amount of tasks that this task list has by doing task list.tasks.count. And this would return the count of tasks that are in this task list. Once we have this, I'm going to set the completed task count equals to plus equals, and then we're going to perform a query on our database by doing the task list.tasks.filter, and we're going to filter through the tasks where the status of that task is equals to complete, and this complete was actually imported from task.models. And then we're going to get the count of the query that gets returned to us. So for the task list tasks, we're going to filter through all of the tasks for and where the field for these task status is complete, and then we're going to have a query returned to us, and then we're going to get that count of the query by doing the count function. Once this is done, we can exit out our for loop, and then once we've looped through all of the task lists, we can do house.completed underscore tasks underscore count equals to completed task count. And then what we can do is that for our house dot and then not completed underscore tasks underscore count, we can just take the total tasks and we can subtract the completed task count from it, and then we should have not completed task count, and I just misspelled count here. And finally, we have to perform the transaction on the database, so we can do house.save, do command save, and we are all good to go. So now that this function is defined, the next thing that we have to do is that we have to run our server. So I'm going to do ./manage.py run server. And we can go to our actual admin panel. And once we're at the admin panel, you're going to see that we have now this new section available, which is called background task, where we have completed tasks and tasks. But if I click on tasks right now, you're going to see nothing shows up. And the reason for that is because we've not yet run the actual command, which is going to actually register our task and then run them. So let's take a look at how to do that. So the first thing that we have to do is that we have to go to our apps.py file, and then we have to define the ready function for our background jobs config class. And then here, what I'm going to do is that once inside of the ready function, I'm going to do import background jobs.tasks and then do command save. And once this is done, I'm going to go to our __init__.py file for our background jobs app, and I'm going to do default _app_config equals to our background underscore jobs dot apps dot, and then the name of the class, which is going to be background jobs config, and I'll paste it here. And this is going to point towards the default app config, which is background underscore jobs, the name of our app, the .apps file, and then background jobs config class. And now the setup side should be done. But still, if you reload, you're going to see that nothing changes. And that is because we still have to run the management command, which is actually going to run our tasks. So for that, what we're going to do is that we're going to be running a command, which is known as /manage.py. And then there's this thing called process underscore tasks. And this command is actually added by the module that we just installed, which is the Django background tasks module. And if I click enter, you're going to see that this is a long running process. But if I go back to our select tasks to change, you're going to see that if I click on completed tasks, and my server needs to be running, so I'm going to open up another shell terminal. I'm going to make sure that our virtual environment is activated. And then once our virtual environment is activated, I am going to actually run the app by doing /manage.py run server. And then if I reload and go to our admin panel and click on completed tasks, you're going to see that nothing happens. And that is because even though we call the process task command, the process task command doesn't even have any registered tasks inside of our Django admin application to run. So to actually register these tasks every time, what we can do is every time the API runs up or spins up, we can actually create these new tasks, and then they can be saved. And then once they are saved inside of our database, then we can call process task, and that is going to run them. So now how do we create the actual task? Well, it's fairly simple. You can go to your task.py file, and then inside of here, every time this file is imported, what we can do is that we can just run some piece of code, and the piece of code is just going to be called calculate house stats. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to pass in a property which is called repeat, which means how often should this function be repeated. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do bt.daily. So remembering bt is the task model that is imported from our actual background task.task module. And now that we've defined the frequency of repeated, then we can define a verbose name. So verbose name just means how the name of this task is going to be saved in the database, and I'm going to just save the verbose name to be exactly the same as the name of our function. So I'm just going to copy the name of the function and paste it in here, excluding the brackets. And then finally we'll have a priority. So what's the priority for this function? And I'm going to set that to 0, and the lower the priority, the higher the actual priority is going to be. And if you have a bunch of tasks, then the tasks with the lower priority are going to be learned first, and then higher priority are going to be run later on. So the lower the number, the higher the priority, essentially. Now we can do command save, and we can actually run our actual app. And if we run our app, you're going to see that if we reload our Django admin panel, that we have these new tasks that have been created. But now the problem is that every time we restart our API, we're going to have just these duplicate tasks being created and created and created. And we do not want that. We just want one background task job for our calculate house stats. We don't want three jobs that perform the same action. And for that, what we can do is that we can have an if statement where we can check to see if the job already exists in our database. And if it doesn't, then we can create it. For that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do if not, and then I'm going to do bt.tasks, or sorry, bt.objects.filter, and we're going to be filtering by the verbose name, and where the verbose name is going to be equal to calculate house stats. And then if this exists. So if there exists no task with the verbose name of calculate house stats, then that means that we have to actually create a new task. Else we don't have to create it. It's already been created in the database. We don't have to do anything. So we can do command save now, and we can go back and run our server. And you're going to see that the task count doesn't increase, but I'm just going to delete these tasks by doing delete. And now I'm going to exit our server and I'm going to run it. And fingers crossed, we're going to see that we just get one representation for our calculate house stats function actually saved. And as you can see, we have this new task that's been now registered inside of API and is ready to run, as you can see. So now once we have the task registered, it's now in the API. How do we run it? Well, to run it, now we're actually going to be using the /manage.py process task command, which is going to be a long-standing process that is going to keep on running. It's never going to end, and it's going to periodically ping our database, see if there are any tasks that need to be run, and then run them, and then go back into a sleep mode and just keep on doing this. So it'll just keep on running. And now if I reload, you're going to see that we have this task still here, but if you go to a completed task, you're going to see that we have this completed task which says that it was run at December 8th, and it didn't have any errors, and it was attempted once, and it completed successfully. And then once the task has been completed successfully, the background task is automatically going to create a new task which is going to be run the next day, and actually save it inside of the tasks model for the Django background tasks package. So now this task that we have, calculate house stats, now this is going to be run tomorrow when manage.py process tasks is called. And to see that our actual function actually worked, if you go back to our house list for our API route, you're going to see that for our house, now we have not completed task count to 1. For here, we have completed task count to 1 and not completed task count to 1. And for here, we have 0, 0, and same here as well. So you can actually see that our function actually ran. So with this, we've successfully implemented background task functionality into our Django API. So with this, we're going to end this video here. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Thank you.